Okay. So, let's see. Was it Wednesday that I had you do a form about the causes of World War II? And I asked you at the very beginning, would you have appeased Hitler like Chamberlain did? Um, and there's some good answers that were given. I appreciated all those answers. Very thoughtful on both sides. Right? Yes, I would, and I wouldn't. Um, it seemed to me like the answer comes down to like how much do you think that the United States should be involved in foreign affairs? Should we be interventionist, meaning go around the world and basically police the world? Wow. Be the law enforcement of the world, or should we kind of stick to ourselves really? And if you think that we should stick to ourselves, maybe you would have appeased Hitler, right? I got a really weird answer, and it wasn't from here. So are you okay if I pick on somebody that's not in this class? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with that, online people? It's gotten in my second period. How can I tell you his name without telling you his name? Keep him anonymous. W. Jones. Is that too obvious? Winston J. That's better. Okay, so he wrote, I would appease Hitler. No, he didn't say that. He said, I would stand up to Hitler. I would be interventionist by giving him land. What do you think about that? Isn't that what Chamberlain did? He gave Hitler land, but he was appeasing Hitler. Like, you don't give people land. You don't stand up to people by saying, you get your way. Right? That's not standing up to someone. You stand up to someone by saying no. So I just wanted to point that out. Right. He basically said, when he tried to explain it last period, he said, I would give him less land. To which Ethan Snyder said, well, he still would have taken the rest just like he did. Right. So the question is, should America be less involved in world affairs or more involved in world affairs? How about this? Should we send troops to the Ukraine? Who says yes? One. Two. Why? Why should we send troops to the Ukraine? Any ideas? They need help. We have the power, right? Is this a defending them or okay? I'll let you talk in just a second because I'm going to quote Spider-Man here. You know what quote I'm going to say? You want to say it, Max? You don't want to say it? Oh, for the people online, people might be listening to this for 10 years. You sure?
I hope not.
Okay. With great power comes great responsibility. If we can, shouldn't we? Or are you okay with letting innocent women and children die? Okay, now, I know Max's response to this, I think, to this question about should we be less involved or more involved in foreign affairs. I think, given your current events project, but I said Christian could go next, so I'll let him go. Go ahead.
I don't know about you guys, but I've only been used by Russia. So we can help them out in facilities.
We have something, or they, I should say, the Russians have like 6,000 nuclear weapons or something like that. Is what I heard on one of the credible radio stations that I listen to or news broadcasts. Right? Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, why?
You look like you had a hand.
You want me to say something?
Do you want to?
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
I mean, I don't really get why we should. Like, we illegally invade a nation. Nobody care. They illegally invade a nation. Everybody care. I don't know what to do.
That's fair. You mean like Afghanistan and Iraq?
Like, yeah, the Middle East. I mean, I think it's like we kill 1,000,000 people, they kill 500, and everybody goes crazy.
I will say that, and this is my opinion based on the facts that I've found out. The Afghanistan invasion, I think, was warranted. It was an okay invasion back in 2002 because we were trying to fight the Taliban and those people and Al Qaeda. Those people, like, those are bad dudes, and they carried out the attack. I would say okay with that. I wouldn't do the nation building afterwards, but and yet how many people died in those 20 years that we were there? Right? In addition to that, I think it's pretty well documented now that the war in Iraq was based on faulty intelligence.
Yeah, why?
And I'm saying that as a person in that time period. It was in my early 20s, and I was like, yeah, let's go get them. And I argued against people who said, oh, all of it was fabricated. Bush lied. So I definitely were up on that now. So basically, this is the question right here. Like, should we, what should we do? And you're saying that, maybe, Christian, you're saying there's a balance. We don't have to send troops, but we can do other things, right? And I will say this, as a counter to that. Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935. We put sanctions on them, except for oil, because oil. Italy did not withdraw from Ethiopia because we didn't put sanctions on their oil. If we don't put sanctions on Russian oil now, is it going to matter? I mean, really, all the things that we're doing. I mean, the governor of Ohio said, "Well, we're stopping every kind of business deal with Russians, and all of our investments we're drawing them out." I think that Ohio is going to matter to Russia in the long run, anyway. All right, let's get into this, because there are people who will be saying that World War II was not worth getting into. World War I was not worth getting into. They'll be looking back. They'll be in 1933, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 1930s, and they're looking back to the 19 teens, and they're going to be thinking, like, bad idea. We shouldn't have done it. Okay, now, here you can see on this side over here, the right-hand side, war, what for profits, of course. These are Americans demonstrating, and they have signs that say something that was a very popular idea, that the real reason we got involved in World War I was so that we could make money. So businessmen could make money. Right. Now, this one is a little bit more risque, this political cartoon here. And by the way, I'm going to have you analyze political cartoons in just a minute. The two halves of the class, notes and then political cartoon analysis. But let's look at this one, and I'll try to lead you through this one just because it's a little bit more risque. But you probably know, you might know, maybe you don't know. I hope you don't know this. I hope you're innocent enough to not know this. But if you do know this, great. That in war, the stereotype is that soldiers go and visit prostitutes. For better or worse, definitely for worse. Shouldn't do that, right? But it's a thing, right? So here, this is a American artist saying we should not get involved in war, in World War II. Now, to do this, to get that message out, here they have any European youth, let's say 1938, right? Any European youth, it doesn't matter if it's German or British or French or Russian or whatever, they're involved, they're fighting a war, or they're ready to fight for their country. They're on the brink, they're ready to go, and they're going to visit the prostitute. And the prostitute's name, of course, you can see there, war. Face is a skull. Yeah. Bad choices all around, right? Now, look at what she's saying. Come on in. I'll treat you right. I used to know your daddy. Dry heat. Right? That's so gross when you did. So let's not think about the sexual implications of that. Yeah, okay. Let's look at the political statement that he's trying to make here. And what did she basically? What's the cartoon saying here? Yeah,
Yeah, the war news, fathers, World War
this isn't 1930. It doesn't just say 38. Just I don't remember the exact date. 20 years ago, that guy's dad was fighting in World War One. Odds are that guy's dad got killed or maimed or shell shocked or something, right? That was a bad experience with that prostitute, quote unquote. And now he's going to go back. The son's going to go back and make the same mistake that the dad made. This doesn't make any sense, right? Why would you do this? Okay, so let's then get to the notes. First, do you remember who the Axis powers were? Three countries, not Russia. Yeah, Italy, Germany, Japan. Allies at this point, the United States is not involved yet. Basically, who are the main two allies?
France and Britain.
France and Britain. If you want to throw in China there because they're fighting Japan, you can. That's fine. Although I don't know if China is officially part of the Allied powers. The point is, France falls really quick and is basically just Britain. The United States is not involved yet. The United States isolationism, staying out of foreign affairs, staying away from other nations. This could be as close as the Western Hemisphere, and there were many people who were saying, let's not get involved in anything outside of our own borders, even if it's like Mexico, Cuba, South America, right? But definitely not conflicts that are thousands of miles away across one ocean or another. There's a huge movement for this after World War One. Many people thinking we should not have gotten involved in the war that's happening in Europe. And now you add to it this time around a war that's happening in Asia, which is even further away. Because after all, and they said the same thing, some of them in World War One, hadn't President Washington in his farewell address told us, stay out of foreign affairs, because all that you will do is get entangled in their messes. It's not worth it. And so the sentiment was neutrality, that we won't take sides, that we'll stay out of the war, we won't join the Axis, we won't join the Allies, we'll just be neutral. Because, look at this question, don't we have enough problems to deal with during the Great Depression? We've got our own fish to fry, basically. We've got to take care of ourselves first because we can't take care of anybody else if we don't get out of the Great Depression. It's that bad. And some people thought getting involved in the war in the first place is one of the reasons why the Great Depression came, because they were tying reparation payments and loans and all that kind of stuff to it. And so they basically said, let's just avoid further problems by staying out of the war. If you can't see that very bottom one says further with a U. And remember, all these bad things that had happened. The Treaty of Versailles, when we got involved with that, that turned out to be a disaster because the Treaty of Versailles is one of the reasons why Italy and Germany and Russia are so land hungry right now. This is a bad deal. Getting involved in that was bad. We stayed out of the League of Nations, right? And good thing, because look at what they're doing. They're watching the world burn around them, and they're not doing anything to stop it. They're not doing anything to stop the Italians or the Germans or the Japanese. We signed this treaty, the Kellogg-Briand Peace Pact, and that was getting involved with other nations, but the thing said we promised not to engage in war, and Germany signed it, and Japan signed it, and Russia signed it, and look what's happening. They're breaking. Like, why should we get involved in things that people aren't going to live up to their word, and they owe us so much money. Britain and France never paid us back. Like, even to this day, never paid us back for the loans we gave in World War One, loans we gave in World War Two. So what's the point in getting involved if it's just going to be an investment that you don't get any money back from? There's one country that paid us back from World War One. You want to guess what country that was in Europe that paid us back for World War One? Yeah. Actually, they did not pay off their reparations until 2010. Even a smaller country than Germany. Good guess, though. Finland. Finland paid us back. We called them honest little Finland. That's it. The popular theory was that our defense manufacturers, bankers, and merchants the ones who would benefit from the war were the ones to pressure our government to get involved in the war, and so it was really a money-making scheme for them. And so, with all of these ideas floating around, by 1937, if you took a poll of Americans, 70% of them would have said getting involved in World War I had been a bad idea. You might know that the Army has khaki uniforms. At the time, the Girl Scouts had khaki-colored uniforms, just as a symbol. I mean, this is how widespread this anti-war sentiment is. Just as a symbol, the Girl Scouts changed their uniforms from khaki color to green. Just as symbol, we are not wanting to be associated with anything military whatsoever. Now, some evidence to show that we were isolationists. So give me a minute to go through these, and then we'll get into some primary source analysis. The London Economic Conference of 1933, the big powers of the world were meeting together, and their goal was to have some kind of currency exchange rates that were stabilized, that they thought would help us with the Great Depression, so the trade would flow easier, and so on and so forth. And we actually did send somebody there. FDR sent our Secretary of State there, but when we got into the details of the conference and found out how much we would have to tie our dollar to other people's currencies, it was just like, no, that's too much. It's too much involvement, so we did not agree to anything at that conference. And that might seem like a small thing, but that's just the beginning, right? There was something called the Good Neighbor Policy that actually Herbert Hoover had started and FDR kept going. And the Good Neighbor Policy said, we are not going to bully our Latin American, Central American, Mexico, Cuba, South America. We're not going to bully them anymore. Like President Teddy Roosevelt, TR, had done. You might remember Teddy, Panama Canal, starting a revolution to get that canal, sending ships around the world to show off our power and so on and so forth. Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Taft, I think even Hoover had sent troops to different Latin American countries, right, to keep their peace or whatever that means. Here, we're starting to say in the Pan American Conference in Montevideo, I think that's in Uruguay, 1933, we officially told our Latin American brothers and sisters that we are not going to do that anymore. We are going to be good neighbors to you. We're going to stay out of your affairs. And we followed that up when a dictator named Fulgencio Batista took control of Cuba. In previous presidencies, there would have been troops sent to stop that overthrow, and we just said, nope, not our business anymore. We got other things to worry about. When Mexico, and this is just a little like side note, footnote in history, but if you think about it from today's perspective, this is like crazy. There were oil companies that were owned by Americans in Mexican territory, and the Mexican government nationalized it, meaning basically took away those oil companies from those Americans, and the Mexican government started to run the oil company. If that happened, that's called nationalizing our oil. When that happened, if that happened today, I mean, like, I'm sure even President Biden would send troops and say, oh, give it back to us, it's ours. Oil is so important, but we did not do anything to get that back in 1938 because, again, we're staying out of foreign affairs. And we're just doing, even to our neighbor, we're staying out of foreign affairs. Now, let me have you think back to when you drew a little cartoon. Remember the cartoon that you drew for imperialism? Haley, you weren't here yet. They drew a cartoon for imperialism. Remember the cartoon you drew? Right. How about this? Do you remember the island nation that we took control of after the Spanish-American War that's close to China? Excellent. But see, if we own the Philippines, they're so close to China and to Japan and other. That's really close to being involved in foreign affairs. And so what we said was, in 1934, we promised the Philippines, here's a 15-year timetable. You get yourselves ready for independence, and then we will give you your independence in 15 years. And we actually did. We followed through on that promise. Because we don't want to be, and we're even giving away land because we don't want to be involved in foreign affairs. We're lowering tariff rates because we don't want people to other countries to get mad at us for high taxes. So again, this is isolationism. This is neutrality. This is staying isolated as best as we can. The Johnson Debt Default Act of 1934 said that if any country had not paid us back the loans that they owed us from World War I, they will not get any more loans until they do. Which meant that only Finland was able to get loans from us. So again, we're staying out. We're not going to give money even to people. And then to make official all those rumors and conspiracy theories that have been going around that businessmen made more money on war. There was the Nye committee. Gerald Nye was a senator, and he actually had a lot of investigations that Congress did. And his conclusion that he came to was we got involved in World War I because of the merchants of death. To make businessmen more money. Now, Max is back there saying, yes, that's right. I'm just kidding. I'm picking on you. I know that your position is more nuanced than this. But what I do want to do is ask you real quick. Do you remember from World War I? Was it just rich businessmen making money and that's why we got involved? Or to phrase the question differently, was there a good reason that we got involved in the war besides making money? You remember what it was? Remember what that telegram was called? Yeah? Zimmerman telegram. Very good. That was Max. People, I'm giving him credit. By the way, if you don't know, Max is talking about how it increments how much. You want to tell us what your project's about?
Overspending.
Right. So it's kind of similar because we do spend a lot of money on foreign bases and foreign wars and so on. And so make information like that. And I don't disagree with Max. I just want to make sure your project is very good. Having said that, Mexico was told by Germany to attack us. That seemed to be an okay reason to defend yourself, right? You know what they were doing? Remember what they were doing in the Atlantic Ocean? All over the place, right? So German U-boats. So there's more to it than that, but that's what people were thinking. Now, you're going to look at this picture, and some of you are going to think that this is a racist picture, an anti-Jewish picture. But it's not. One of the reasons I know it's not is because of the artist. You know who the artist is. By looking at the picture, can you tell who drew this? Yeah. It's a Dr. Seuss World War II political cartoon. Dr. Seuss, Theodore Herzl, was a Jewish man. Okay, so like he is not making fun of his own people here, right? This is actually making fun of the people who say we should stay out of the war. In fact, the names of people that say we should stay out of the war: Charles Lindbergh, Gerald Nye, down here. Okay. Now, yes, it does say I am part Jewish right here, but let's just tease this out a little bit because I'm actually going to have you look at Dr. Seuss cartoons in just a minute. Who is this person supposed to be? It's Uncle Sam, right? The United States, if you will. Okay. And you do see here it says I am part Jewish, and down here you can see he's locked up in the stocks. Public notice: this bird is possessed of an evil demon. Charles Lindbergh, you know, the guy who flew across the Atlantic Ocean in the 20s. Gerald Nye, the congressman who was saying the merchants of death and all that. In essence, the sign is saying, and these men right here are saying, Lindbergh and Nye, that the United States is possessed of an evil demon, and the evil demon are Jewish. Okay. Now, on the surface, that sounds terrible, right? But is that Dr. Seuss's idea? Is that what Dr. Seuss is trying to tell you? No. So look real close. See this word public? Why is it not spelled with a C, like we spell public? Why is it spelled with a K? If you ever see a word that's supposed to be spelled with a K or with a C and it's spelled with a K instead, What language should you think of? No? Nobody? What? German. German language has a lot of C or K's in place of where we would have C's, right? So what's he saying then? It's a little tiny reference here, but what's he trying to tell us? That this attitude is whose attitude? It's not just the isolationists, it's the Nazis too. That there's a connection between the people who are saying we should stay out of the war and the Nazis. Interesting. In essence, then, what Dr. Seuss is saying, if you believe that we should stay out of the war because you believe that there's this Jewish conspiracy to make money. By the way, Uncle Shylock was a greedy Jewish person in a Shakespeare play. Bad guy. If you believe that, then really what you are is in league with Hitler. And staying out of the war is morally wrong. If that doesn't make sense, let's see if we can get some stuff here for you in just a minute. Okay. This is the last page of slide of notes for today. If there's no other thing that you need to know for today, it's this one right here. If you want to circle this bullet point, because this is straight from end of course exam curriculum. Neutrality Acts of 1935, 36, 37. Many congressmen felt the mood of America, and it's isolationist. The people were isolationist. The people didn't want to be involved in wars and that kind of stuff. And so they passed these laws. And this law said if the president declares a country to be in a state of war, then we are not allowed to trade with that country. The president declares their state of war, no aid to them at all. Which means today, if this law was enacted today, we could not send any help to Ukraine, right? Because the president said it's a state of war. So, and there you go, right there. So then there was a civil war in Spain during the same time that these laws are being passed. The democracy of Spain, the democratically elected people of Spain, leaders of Spain, were being attacked by a fascist dictator named Francisco Franco. Francisco Franco was cut from the same cloth as Hitler and Mussolini. They were all three fascists. They were all three fascist dictators. And basically what happens here is Franco gets help from Hitler and Mussolini to overthrow the democracy. Franco takes control of Spain. Now Spain doesn't join World War II, but he still rules them with an iron fist. And Hitler and Mussolini get to try out their war machines in this civil war. And because the president had said that Spain is in a state of war, that we couldn't send any aid to them to help them fight off this dictator. There was one group of people who decided to go. It was a couple hundred people. They just went on their own accord, Americans, and they called themselves the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. You can look them up if you want, but we can't help them because they're in a state of war. In Japan, there was an American boat off the coast that got sunk. It was called the Penne. Every time a boat gets blown up, we get involved in a war, right? What was the boat that got blown up for the Spanish-American War? USS. Remember that's World War I. So that's a World War I boat that gets blown up that we get involved in the war. What was it's named after a state up north. Starts with an M. Maine. Remember the Maine, USS Maine, right? Every time a boat gets blown up, we go to war. But here, we're so worried about staying out of foreign affairs that when Japan apologized for blowing up this boat, we did not fight them. Last but not least, there is the America First Committee. The America First Committee was this committee. Ford, Lindbergh, maybe even Walt Disney joined it, saying we should stay out. They made speeches, held huge rallies all across the country. Now, if you go to Classroom, this is just for a completion grade. There are only 11 cartoons, and so there are 11 questions. What I'd like you to do is look at this, see if you can figure out what the messages of the cartoon are, There were 2 people last period that got perfects. If you don't do well in it, that's okay. We can come back later and look at it later. But I'd like to see how you do with them. Make sure that you answer all of them, click submit so you can get your completion points. And that is the end of today.